So, welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. I can just invite you to take a seat. So welcome back to the final session of the day. We're going to follow the same pattern with this final session. We're looking at the challenge of decarbonisation, the green economy. We're going to have, first of all, a keynote which is summarising for us some of the challenges in this particular area, and then a series of presentations about how services can help and respond to those challenges. So the first presentation, is by Lucy Rees of the UK Green Building Council. Lucy, can you hear me? I can see you. I can't quite hear you yet, though. It's your mute. I'm relying on my back office team to ensure that I get the outcome that I need to proceed. So I think it's at her end. Lucy, I don't know if you can hear me, but we think you're on mute. No? No. First technical hitch, folks. Hang on. Bear with me. I'll let you into a secret while... Okay, trying to reconnect. I'll let you into a secret how I've managed to keep the timings reasonably good so far. I found out just at tea break that the schedule I've been using has actually been set so that all the timings are 15 minutes in advance of the actual times. Lucy, hi, can you hear me?
I can still hear you. Can you hear me this time?
We can hear you.
Brilliant.
And see you. Welcome,
yeah.
welcome to the conference. I'll hand over to you to make an introduction and to take us through the Comfort as a Service.
Thank you. Sorry about that, everybody. It's a classic case of turn it off and on, and then it works again. So, hello, everybody. Welcome, and thank you for joining us today on day 2 of Servitization Live, where this afternoon's second theme is looking at the Comfort as a Service business model. My name is Lucy Rees. I am a sustainability advisor for the UK Green Building Council, and I'm here really to set the scene for our 3 speakers that follow me this afternoon by looking at some of the key sustainability megatrends and themes across the built environment before we hear from them about how Comfort as a Service business models are responding to some of those challenges. So, buildings. They are designed for people, and those people are trying to get something done in them, whether that's work, raising their family, manufacturing a product. The core purpose of a building is its ability to keep people efficient, safe, healthy, and importantly, comfortable. But this comes against the backdrop of a climate crisis that's no longer just looming on the horizon. Building regulations, standards, and laws across the globe are laying out requirements and recommendations to improve the efficiency of energy use in buildings and reduce their impact. However, not all energy-saving measures are equal or necessarily go down that well, because they need to be implemented while also making sure we achieve acceptable comfort for occupants. So how do we help push for buildings to be safe and sustainable, but also comfortable for their users? And I should probably explain first a little bit about why I've been asked to come and speak to you about all of this first. So the UK Green Building Council is a not-for-profit membership organisation with a mission to radically transform the sustainability of the built environment. And we do this by changing the way that it's planned, designed, constructed, maintained, and operated. Our work in doing this focuses on our 5 key impact areas that you can see shown here, We've got mitigating and adapting to climate change, eliminating waste and maximizing resource efficiency, embracing and restoring nature and promoting biodiversity, optimizing health and well-being of people, and creating long-term value for society and improving quality of life. Our theory of change here really visualizes how we look to affect change on sustainability in the built environment and how our actions deliver impact. So what we do is collaborate with the wider industry to advocate, enable, and inspire accelerated leadership and action. And we primarily do that with business and government. And we currently have over 600 organizations in our membership, which spans the entire built environment value chain, a selection of which you can see here. So I thought what I would do today is set the scene sort of through our eyes by running through each of those impact areas in turn to explore some of the key themes and challenges that are out there. And if we start with the big one, climate change. The latest contribution to the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change Sixth Assessment Report came out just this past August and should be taken as a massive wake-up call. In the face of what is now for the first time being termed unequivocal evidence of the scale of warming we as human beings are already causing on the atmosphere, ocean, and land, this report reinforced the growing evidence base that too many commitments towards climate action are being missed, and that our current pledges need to be scaled up and matched with plans to deliver urgent change. The report confirmed that warming of 1.5 degrees C and 2 degrees C will be exceeded during the 21st century unless deep reductions in carbon emissions and other greenhouse gases occur in the coming decades. And the built environment sector, we have a big role to play. It's currently reported that 38% of global energy-related greenhouse gas emissions are attributable to buildings and construction. And it's as much as 28% of that comes specifically from operating those buildings. So we're looking at heating and cooling, electricity use, and plumbing. By 2050, the world's building stock is projected to double, with almost 70% of the global population expected to be living in urban areas. So we can see that the need for action is constantly growing. And progress towards sustainable buildings and construction is advancing, but improvements are still not keeping up with this growing building sector and rising demand for energy services. The Global Status Report in 2017 made a note that energy intensity per square meter of global buildings needs to improve by on average 30% by 2030 compared to 2015 if we're going to be on track to meet the global climate ambitions set out in the Paris Agreement. This is a challenge, but it's also an opportunity. As I already mentioned, the way that we provide comfort in our buildings has a huge role to play in all of this. Over a quarter of global energy-related greenhouse gas emissions are coming from that heating, cooling, and operating building side of things. So Dave McInnes, who's speaking after me today, will get into a bit more of the cooling side of things in more detail. But to give a bit of an introduction to that, it was reported a couple of years ago that there was roughly one single room air conditioning unit available for every 7 people on Earth. And there have been loads of reports that are now also projecting that by 2050, there are likely to be more than 4.5 billion of them, which would effectively make having an air conditioning unit as common as having a mobile phone is today. And we might think that sounds pretty crazy here in the UK, but in the US, for instance, they are already using as much electricity for air conditioning every year as the whole of Africa uses for everything. And in an increasingly warming world, it's projected that the rest of us, as we begin to reach similar levels, will be contributing to the fact that air conditioning will use about 13% of electricity worldwide, which is going to be producing the same amount of carbon emissions as India would now. And all these statistics show the pretty awful irony of the feedback loop involved in this. We've got warmer temperatures, which are leading to more air conditioning. but more air conditioning, leading to warmer temperatures due to the huge demand for electricity. And refrigerant management is a linked issue too, as the cooling technologies used to provide thermal comfort are leaking really large quantities of hydrofluorocarbon. And while you may have heard of these HFCs as the chemicals that replace the ozone-depleting CFC refrigerant, while HFCs aren't ozone depleting, their global warming potential can be hundreds of thousands of times that of carbon dioxide, so they're a huge climate forcer. And on the flip side, we've got heating. The energy to use to heat the spaces we live and work is one of the highest contributors to our individual carbon footprints. Globally, heat is accounting for nearly half of all energy consumed and 40% of energy-related carbon dioxide emissions. And if we hone on the UK, it's thought that 19% of our emissions are coming from warming up the places that we live and work, with more than 3/4 coming from domestic buildings. And with most UK houses currently reliant on gas boilers for this, with the British government moving towards phasing these out, customers need significant support if they're going to be able to decarbonise their homes. So if I now move on to waste and resource issues, we know that our current patterns of production and consumption are widely understood to be a major cause of today's environmental challenges, which is highlighted by some of the statistics that you can see here. And again, what's really evident is the huge impact of our buildings on this, with 60% of waste in the UK coming from construction, demolition, and excavation. Circular business models have been highlighted as one of the main ways to decouple value creation from resource use and waste generation. And if we're able to move away from our currently sort of more linear take, make, dispose economy. And the Ellen MacArthur Foundation, which works to promote the wider concept of circular economy, outlines its key principles as, firstly, designing out waste and pollution; second, keeping products and materials in use for as long as possible; and third, regenerating natural systems. However, our current production and consumption patterns tend not to support those strategies. And one of the big reasons for this is the linear transfer of ownership of products and materials towards the customer. And this is really preventing a bigger stewardship role from the manufacturer's perspective, and in fact can encourage increased material wastage by creating an incentive to increase sales. If we want to move to a circular economy, we need to move the burden of being sustainable and circular away from customers and onto vendors, and so create a business incentive to do it. And that is part of the reason why we at UKGBC have placed products as a service at the heart of our 5 principles for circularity in the built environment. Comfort as a service business models are a really good example of this, because they allow building owners, developers, and users to outsource the responsibility of their heating and cooling requirements. We already pay for only the energy and water that we actually use in our buildings, and we're also subscribing to services for things like music and TV, only paying for what we actually need. So why should comfort be any different? And our currently very extractive and wasteful linear economy is also increasingly recognised as one of the main underlying causes of biodiversity loss. It's being reported today that over 90% of that biodiversity loss is also purely down to our extraction and processing of natural resources. And as a consequence, we're facing the pretty depressing fact that the global wildlife populations have fallen by something like 58% since 1970. To halt and reverse biodiversity loss, we need to fundamentally transform the way that we produce, use, and consume our products. The circular economy, including that focus on servitization, can offer a framework for this, because when products are kept in use for longer, the need for production of new materials from our natural resources is reduced, which leaves greater room for biodiversity. And if we look now at some of the health and well-being trends across the built environment, Indoor environmental quality is the focus, as this dictates how well a building meets the comfort requirements of its occupants in terms of health, well-being, and productivity. And this can include lots of different aspects, such as thermal comfort, air quality, lighting, and acoustics. So a really wide variety of factors that together provide welfare to people. And even if only one of those fails, indoor quality and comfort is strongly affected. But it's generally accepted, I think, that thermal comfort is by a long way the most important aspect of indoor environmental quality that concerns building occupants. And this is also both then the most energy demanding, as we looked at earlier, but also quite a difficult one to optimize. And we all understand its impact, particularly following a year when we've spent more time inside than ever. A lack of thermal comfort can make us feel stressed, distracted, tired. But more importantly, excessive hot and cold interiors are unhealthy, particularly for the elderly, sick, or vulnerable during harsh winters or intense heat waves. And this all underpins the reasoning behind the World Green Building Council having named prioritizing comfort as one of its 6 principles for a healthy, sustainable built environment within their framework work launched in November last year. And this is an educational tool that's been designed to help unlock the huge potential that the building and construction sector have in improving human health and quality of life. But maintaining thermal comfort is an increasing challenge. Population susceptibility to climate change is increasing, heightening exposure to both dangerous hot and cold temperatures across the world. Since 1998, for example, the area of land that's been impacted by more than 30 heat waves per year has doubled. And linked to this, it's clear that comfort issues and risks can have wider social implications and challenges too. For example, some researchers recently found that less developed countries will likely be more affected by heat waves in a 1.5 degrees centigrade warmer world than developed countries would in a 2-degree warmer world. The impacts of climate change and extreme weather can affect anyone, but those living in certain types of buildings or in certain locations have the potential to experience more serious harm. The richest 1% of people in the world are often quoted as being responsible for more than twice as much carbon pollution as the poorest half of humanity. But those with money and power will also be able to buy some protection against the effects of global warming, at least for a bit longer than people without those privileges and resources. In most of the world, air conditioning, for example, is out of financial reach for people. And the effects of heat waves, be that heat exhaustion, dehydration, even heart attacks, become more likely for them as a result. And this is a situation that's echoed in overheated cities all over the world. In the US, immigrant workers are 3 times more likely to die from heat exposure than American citizens. And in India, it's those living in slums that are most vulnerable. But here in the UK too, we often speak of our fuel poverty crisis. And this is something we'll hear about from Oliver Moffat as he speaks about heating as a service after me. But we know that the number of homes in the UK experiencing fuel poverty is rising in the face of soaring energy prices, homes that lack energy efficiency measures, and general pressures associated with the rising price of living. And out of this comes the concept of the just transition, which looks to encourage a shift from an extractive economy to a regenerative one, using approaches that are holistic, just, and ensure no one is left behind. And the just transition is closely related to another cause called climate justice. And this is the concept of viewing climate change through the lens of human rights. It identifies how the causes and effects of climate change are unequally and unfairly distributed. And then the movement works to safeguard the rights of the most vulnerable people and share the burdens and benefits of climate change and its resolution fairly. The words of Mary Robinson, who's former president of Ireland and UN High Commissioner on Human Rights, current chair of the Elders, summarize this challenge really well, I think. She said, "As we pursue this new stage of bold action, we will succeed only if we recognize that the struggle to combat climate change is inextricably linked to tackling poverty, inequality, and exclusion. If we keep that link foremost in our minds, our solutions will be more effective and more enduring." And to end, I guess, on a bit more of a positive note, I should say that so many of the solutions to these challenges do already exist. Eliminating building emissions by 2050 is possible with existing technologies and the urgent adoption of supporting policies and investments. The problem is that these technologies and solutions aren't always common knowledge or really that well understood, and we don't have time to individually track them all down. So at UKGBC, we launched our online solutions library this June to play our part in helping to source and profile some of the practical and commercially viable solutions out there that are helping to address sustainability challenges across the built environment, such as those that I've been discussing today. And it's also events like today's Servitization Live that are really important in raising awareness and showcasing the innovative approaches that are out there. So I'm really looking forward to hearing directly from our speakers in a minute about how they themselves are rising to the challenges I've set out through comfort as a service business models. And it couldn't be much timelier for me to be ending on this optimistic note, as the eyes of the world will be on Glasgow, finally, in less than 4 weeks' time for COP26. And this really needs to be a key milestone moment and turning point in our battle against climate change. It's our opportunity to demonstrate that the Paris Agreement is effective, momentum is unstoppable, and possibly above everything else, that we're moving from targets to action. Thank you.
Lucy, that was excellent. Thank you. You did a wonderful job of laying out the challenge. And if I may, I'm just going to ask you a quick question. You mentioned as part of the pillars, your pillars for responding to the climate change issues, the climate emergency, was products as a service. And you talked about that from the point of view of stewardship of the product. Is that, from your perspective, when you look at product as a service, is it that stewardship, the idea that the product ownership is retained by the manufacturer? Is it that stewardship which is seen to you to be one of the key benefits of that particular business model? Or are there other factors from your perspective which play into why you think that particular business model is favourable and part of a response to the climate challenges?
Yeah, so I think, well, I'll take the example of air conditioning as a service. So where the company is owning the equipment, paying for the electricity and water it uses, and the building owner buys that air conditioning at a fixed fee or sort of pay-as-you-use basis. I think the success of it is in making sure that the ownership stays with the manufacturer, because the model works in that it can then account for external factors that affect energy consumption and all the associated costs better within a building. So it can then also factor in things like occupant behavior to generate much more optimized control strategies for all the services and equipment automatically, which helps to bring down that energy use. But in doing that, we're also then releasing the occupants themselves from operating the service and equipment, which is then getting rid of that much more traditional energy model. So I think that's important. And I think, so part of my work at UKGBC is focusing around sort of innovation and solutions. And I think that's one of the things that really interests me as well about this whole business model, in that it's really accelerating the deployment of clean cooling and heating technologies at scale, and also into emerging markets, because it's helping to lower that upfront cost and aligning sort of incentives for effective operation and maintenance of buildings.
Okay, thank you. I'll now just turn to the room and say if there's any questions. I've got one question. Yeah, would you like to pose the question?
Yes. Hello, it's Adrian Botham again from Service Back Consulting. Because I've been here quite a while, I've asked a few questions, but there's an interesting one for me that I've listened to a lot of presentations now, Tim, and I think this one's no different. There's almost a premise that it's got to be the manufacturer that takes ownership of the equipment and manages the whole ecosystem on servitization. And I'm sat here asking myself, has that got to be the case? You know, there are financial providers in this room, has been the last 2 days. There are service providers in the room. Could it be that for certain use cases or certain industries, it is not actually the manufacturer that should do it? The manufacturer should stick to making stuff, and someone else, I mean the partnership, so the grouping, takes ownership for the kit and provides the rest of it, takes the risk, that kind of thing. Is it always the manufacturer, or is there ever a case for when it isn't? And I guess I'm sort of,
thank you.
I suppose it's a double-barrel question at yourself and at Lucy, really. Any thoughts on that topic?
Okay, I'll hand it over to Lucy, if I may, in the interest of time. We can pick up over coffee. Lucy, does it have, going back to your pillars, product as a service, is it an expectation that it's a manufacturer that delivers product as a service, or could it be a range of possible providers which focus on delivering that product as a service? Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, it's probably not quite a direct question that I can help address, because we have it included in our strategy as something that's important. And I think the point is it's trying to get away from putting all the pressure on the building users themselves to be responsible for being able to improve, for example, the energy efficiency of their homes. There's already so much that's going on if we also look at things like the gas boiler ban as well. It's how we're trying to help support consumers in making the right choices. And I think it is an important business model because it helps actually remove some of those choices in the first place. But yes, in terms of the sort of more technical sides of who else should be involved, I'm probably not the right person.
Okay, so I guess the point is the focus is on product as a service, irrespective of who is actually providing it as a service. So thank you, Lucy. We'll turn to the question from the online audience. Parachute.
Thanks, Tim. We do have one question from Ellie. Ellie, thank you for your question. And would you like to introduce yourself and ask the question?
Hi, Lucy. Thank you very much for a really informative and really clear presentation. I thought that was fantastic. You've touched a little bit on incentives in your previous answer as well, and you've mentioned COP26, but where do you think the really key incentive for change is going to come from? We've known about climate change for a while, and maybe change hasn't happened as quickly as expected. So how and where do you think this real key incentive for change needs to come from?
Yeah, I guess it's kind of the carrot and a stick thing, which is going to be stronger. I think a lot of it comes from just growing pressure from businesses as a whole in making sure that if you aren't acting on climate change, you become the outlier. And I think this is part of what our work focuses on as well. So part of our work in the run up to COP has all been about calling on our membership, which is across the built environment chain, to make much stronger and more credible climate commitments and actually take immediate action towards net zero. And so you'll have seen all these campaigns that are now getting huge momentum. And the one that we're really backing and contributing to is the UNFCCC's Race to Zero campaign. And I think that is where the pressure is coming in, because we are seeing signatories literally racing to get on board with it and competing with each other to make sure that they're committing to halving their emissions by 2030 and achieving net zero emissions as soon as possible, but by 2050 at the latest. And it's creating this sense of competition that I think is really driving people forwards in the agenda.
That's great. Thank you, Lucy. That's a great response. So, Lucy, thank you again for making the time to join us this afternoon. It really is appreciated. So, thank you. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to move us on to 3 presentations, which are really going to talk about manufacturers responding to those challenges. The first one is from Dave McInnes from Kia. Dave, can you hear me okay?
Yep. Hi, how's it going?
Hi. Right, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, everyone. I really appreciate the invitation to come from my living room in Singapore and join you in your conference center in Birmingham. I'm from a company called Care. So for those of you who aren't from Asia, CARE is a cooling as a service provider. And we provide cooling as a service to industrial and commercial buildings like shopping malls, data centers, offices, pharmaceutical manufacturing, and educational facilities. And it was a great question from the floor about who can actually fill this gap and servitize cooling. And there are some reasons why it's difficult for the manufacturers to do this based around their legacy of what they do and what their core business is. And then there are difficulties around how we can put the commitments onto building owners. So we fill that gap in the middle. We're actually not a manufacturer. We buy equipment from the manufacturers, and then we put together the cooling as a service offering and then bring that to our customers. It's great to learn and share from all the other presentations that I've seen. Lucy, a great setup for me. Thank you very much with all that data and information. Also, Davi, I know, did a presentation this morning around why customers are flocking to this business model. But what I wanted to do when I was putting together this presentation, what I struggled with was a lot of the members of the audience will come from different backgrounds. So different countries, different markets, different industries. So how can I make a 15-minute presentation on comfort as a service relevant to all of you? And so to tackle that, what I'd like to do is use a very simple problem and solution format. If I can align a problem that we all see, and then I can offer some solutions to that, maybe it will be relevant to all of us. So the problem that I'd like to take on is that caterpillars are very slow. Now, I'm sure we all agree with this as a statement. Caterpillars are very slow. They're very small. They crawl along the ground like this. I think we've all seen caterpillars crawl. I have 3 children, and when I read stories to them about caterpillars, they talk about crawling through the forest, creeping by inch. They're extremely slow. Now, whilst that is not a very controversial statement, what might be controversial is why is that a problem worth discussing here? We're taking on the big challenges. Why am I talking about the speed of caterpillars? And so to help us understand the question, I really wanted to take you through a bit more context as to why this is a problem worth investigating and solving, and actually why it's the most important question or problem we should be solving. And to give you some context, so we talked already, Lucy shared some information around Paris 2015, and I think we're all familiar with the fact that we came together globally and said, this is a time for action. There were slogans like the time for global action, united for climate action. And essentially the 2 things that came out of this was that we needed to move to a low carbon climate resilient future. So we need to use less energy, and we needed our energy to be from cleaner, greener sources. And because we could do that, we could then limit the temperature rise globally to 2 degrees or even 1.5 degrees. Now, I know we're all very familiar with that, regardless of what industry we're from, but in terms of the role that the built environment and cooling specifically plays in that, we may not be aware of essentially how important it is to the success or failure of this goal. So Lucy shared some data. I just wanted to highlight regarding cooling specifically. This is from the International Energy Agency. Cooling demand is rising dramatically. This is unquestionable, and it will not change. As we develop more hospitals, more schools, more manufacturing facilities, the built environment is growing, we will require more cooling. And the demand will go from 10% to 30% of the global electricity consumption. Put in a slightly different way, the exact same data, the Economist Intelligence Unit says that cooling alone accounts for 10% of the global electricity consumption, a shocking number. But what they go in a bit further and say is if the inefficient systems are not replaced, demand is expected to triple in the next 30 years. So essentially what we're saying is cooling is going to grow. That's unquestionable. In order to de-link the negative impacts on the environment, we essentially need to have more efficient systems. So back in 2015, when we heard this and all the industry professionals in the cooling business came together, we said, let's assess the situation. So if you plot all of the buildings globally on a x-axis of performance, and you look at what percentage of customers and how good is the performance of their cooling system in their building, you wouldn't be surprised that it's a pretty obvious distribution. It's a very obvious bell curve. You have some people at the leading edge who are setting the benchmarks, which you can see in the blue arrow at the bottom, the 2015 benchmark. You have some people that are terrible. And when we talk about cooling system performance, we mean the ability to give the conditions required, but also the sustainability metrics and the carbon emissions. And so this is what it looked like. And we said we have to do something about this. We have to answer the call. So what happened? Well, in 2016, the best got better. Our benchmark for how good and sustainable and how low the carbon emissions could be in our cooling systems improved dramatically. And in 2017, the world followed. Essentially, the people that are leading the way are finding new technology. They're using data to improve their performance, and then they're teaching the rest of the world how to do it. And then that technology, which was slightly older, is cheaper and more accessible. So Lucy touched on the accessibility of technology in the market. It's really only available, the cutting edge technology is only available to that top tier. Then in 2018, again, the best got better. And in 2019, the world followed. And then in 2020, the best got better. And in 2021, the world followed. And it continues on like this. Now, what we do is we come together in conferences like this and we celebrate the improvement that we've made. If you look at the benchmark of 2015, and now you look at the performance level we have today, that is a vast improvement, a huge, huge improvement and a massive impact. But then if you scale out and look at the entire chart, you can see that the vast majority of buildings still have cooling systems that perform worse than the 2015 benchmark. So whilst it's worth celebrating the fact that we're improving and moving, we have to realize that we are moving extremely slowly. And we are moving very much like a caterpillar down this axis. This is how the performance of our buildings and our cooling systems is improving over time. And this is why it's so important to realize that caterpillars are extremely slow. Think about how long it's taken to get where we are today. This is 6 years. How long will it take for all of those red buildings to pass the 2015 benchmark? How long do you think it'll take for the worst buildings that we had back in 2015 to be the best that we had in 2015? Probably another 10 or 15 years if we continue at the rate that we're moving at now. And because of that, we are falling short. As we've already mentioned today, the IPCC report essentially has said there is still time to act, but it must happen immediately. We are falling short. We are not meeting the commitments that we need to meet in order to address this challenge. And so we've already alluded to COP26. And again, we see very similar language. We cannot afford to wait to act against the threat of climate change. In November, in just a few weeks from now, we're going to bring together world leaders to commit to urgent global climate action. And this is great. The problem is the language that we're using is exactly the same as the language we used back in 2015. It's actually very, very similar. And if I was to forecast what COP26 is going to look like, I would tell you it's going to look something like this. You will have world leaders standing on stages behind green logos. We'll have a lot of leaves, a lot of green. We'll have panel discussions. We will have handshakes. We will have photo opportunities. We will have commitments. We will have pledges. We will have promises. We will see all of this. And it looks extremely dignified. I mean, I look at this picture and you can only be filled with hope. I mean, look at all these people in their suits and ties, all standing together to come and answer the challenge of climate change. But whilst this is very dignified and whilst the world sees this, I actually see something a little bit more like this. In that we're standing around and we're cheering on the caterpillar. We're telling him to go faster. We're telling him he needs to go quicker. But it's still a caterpillar. And inherently, caterpillars cannot go that fast. It's not something that we can actually change. So if we're going to continue to cheer on the caterpillar, we're going to continue to get the exact same results. If we do the same thing in 2021 that we did in 2015, we might feel better for a while, but we're going to see the exact same results. Now, that's a very pessimistic message, although I've tried to cheer you up with a cartoon caterpillar and some Charlie Brown characters. But there is a solution. And the solution that we can find is that instead of looking to a caterpillar for inspiration, which is not very inspiring as an animal, we can look to someone like Netflix, who is much more inspiring. Now, why do I say Netflix can help? I don't mean we can sit around and get worried about the world and just watch Narcos and Money Heist, although those are great shows, I suggest you watch them. I think we can look to them for inspiration. And if I look at Netflix's business model, if I do the exact same chart, but instead of looking at cooling system performance, I look at Netflix features, content, and their user interface. And I chart their customers and what access they have to different features, content, and an improved user interface. The question is, does it look like this? And the answer is, of course it doesn't. If you were to plot all of Netflix's customers, I assume all of us are using this platform. If I was to plot all of our performance that we get from Netflix on a graph, it would look like this. 100% of us get access to the best features, the latest content, and the most well-designed user interface upgrades that they have available. 100% of customers get the exact same service level. And that's because we all log into the exact same Netflix. And when they make those changes and make those updates and add that content, when we log into it and enjoy that service, we get the exact same user experience. So as an example, in October, Netflix decided to add Seinfeld. We can all go in now and log on and get access to that content. Now think about the difference and the power of this business model compared to what you saw previously. First of all, every user gets access to the best they have to offer at all times, and any upgrades happen overnight. In the previous example, I told you it's going to take 15 or 20 years to catch up. Netflix offered Seinfeld overnight, and we all had access to it in 24 hours. That's the difference in speed, 20 years versus 20 hours. The next thing that you don't necessarily see on this slide is that the more people use it, the faster the rate of improvement. More users on Netflix means there's more revenue, so they can invest more in technology, and it means there's more data. The two things that we've talked about across these 2 days, technology that you're using and data that you have, those fuel innovation and those fuel improvement in performance. So the more people that you have that subscribe actually improve and accelerate the transition to better systems and more sustainable systems. So put simply, entertainment as a service is not limited by the caterpillar effect, and cooling as a service isn't either. We see this actually just today. I was reading on BBC, Windows are going to come out with Windows 11, and tomorrow we can go and download it. We can all go and do that tomorrow. We don't have to wait 20 years. It's happening in all parts of the world, and it's this as a service economy which is allowing and unlocking these real innovations. And that's what we need to do here. So cooling as a service, I think many of you will be familiar of what it is, but just to summarize how we see it, cooling as a service is very simple. The provider, like Care as an example, will invest in all of the infrastructure required for the cooling system. So continuous investment in that system. We also take on the operations, service and maintenance, repairs, utilities, so the operating costs, management of manpower, monitoring and compliance, and accountability for performance. So that moving accountability from the building owners to the cooling as a service provider is a key one. And also bringing the energy consumption from the building owner to the cooling as a service provider is a key one. And the building owner simply pays as they use the cool air. So a single rate, pay as you use. So the building owner now can focus on something that they have the power to work on, which is minimizing their consumption. Try and turn off the air conditioning as much as possible, but still deliver the conditions that you want. And the cooling as a service provider can work on responsible production. So how do you make that as efficiently as possible? And how do you bring circular thinking and a circular portfolio thinking into the equation? Now, this seems quite radical in that it's not really been done that much around the world, although now there are many examples that we saw from South Africa with Davi's presentation with Energy Partners and also with us in Asia. But it's actually not very radical. So as Lucy mentioned, buildings already today buy electricity and water from a utility provider. However, on their balance sheet, they put cooling, they put lifts, and they put lights. So all we have to do is simply move cooling from one side of the equation to the other. And you immediately unlock all of these benefits that we see in the Netflix model that we don't see in the Caterpillar model. And so what does that look like? So what have we done? So we've been offering cooling as a service for about a decade now. We started in 2012 in Singapore, and we're now in Singapore and in India. And our products look like this, and our services look like this. So as I mentioned at the beginning, we are not a manufacturer. So all of the equipment here is from the main manufacturers. We put it together, but you can see it all looks and feels the same, because every customer that comes into the portfolio gets the performance, gets the access to the technology, gets the access to the design thinking, and gets all of the benefits from having a service provider accountable for the performance of the system, as opposed to the individual building owner. So they all look very simple. So technology is one thing, and then the other is data. So you can see on the right-hand side, we have screens in actually all of our plant rooms and all of our cooling systems, where all of that data is collected, put to the cloud, and we can analyze it. And actually we can improve all of our systems by having new buildings injected into the portfolio. The more data we get from different types of buildings in different markets, the better it is for actually all the buildings that are currently in the portfolio. And so when you adopt that same business model, essentially, if we look at the global distribution of cooling systems, a cooling as a service portfolio is always at the top end of the scale. It's always better. And because more and more people are going into those portfolios, it gets better and better and better. And it sort of leaves that caterpillar behind. So as we look at the question of, should we be improving building by building? Should we be cheering on the caterpillar? Or should we just move to a different business model, which immediately gets rid of all of those challenges? I think it's fairly obvious from the slide of what we need to be doing. And this is what it looks like. So CARE is based in Singapore. And so these numbers are in Singapore dollars. So we have a very small percentage of the global cooling market. 50 million Singapore dollars, I think that's about 25 million pounds invested in cooling assets under management, serving about 10 million square feet of space. But look at what the impact that has. If you had a pie chart of the global cooling market, you wouldn't even register. Look at the impact that has. So 55,000 metric tons of carbon saved every year, low GWP commitments. So we looked, Lucy mentioned some things around refrigeration previously. So we are already migrating. There's low GWP refrigerants in the market. We have already installed them. We are already maintaining them. We are already looking at how we take other high GWP refrigerants out of our portfolio safely. And we're showing proof of concepts here and in India as well. And secondly, solar is a standard. So we have a business park in India, which is 100% solar. We also have assets in Singapore. Solar is a little bit more difficult in Singapore because we're very, very high-rise vertical city. And we actually have a lot of cloud coverage, but we have sites in Singapore that are 100% solar as well. So as we're looking for moving to a performance level that is required, and you saw those graphs that Lucy was showing, we need to speed up, but we already have the technology. It is already available. We can do it just like Netflix in 24 hours by moving to as a service and having more as a service providers in the marketplace. So that's why we think it's so important. That's why we feel it's the most important challenge that we should be addressing. This is some of the results that we've had so far by doing this for the last 9 or 10 years. And I think just generally, we need to always keep in mind that the one message that I have is caterpillars are just too slow. And we need to make the choice. Are we going to be inspired by a caterpillar pace? And are we going to be limited by it and restricted by it? Or can we throw out that model entirely? And that would be my suggestion as a solution. And I think I'd just leave you with one last thought before I would be happy to stay on and take any questions that come from the audience. But one thought that keeps me awake at night is, 66 million years ago, I think is the consensus. A meteorite flew through space and flew into the Earth, and the impact of which caused a mass extinction of about 70% of the life on this planet and the end of the dinosaurs. Now, the poor dinosaurs, they met this fate from an asteroid that was 10 kilometers wide that flew through space that they couldn't see or have no way of seeing or knowing was coming. And there's nothing they could do to prepare for it, even if they did. I really hope that we don't meet the same fate based on a tiny caterpillar. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dave. So Dave, thank you. That was an excellent presentation of how, again, through the as-a-service business model, we can respond to some of the challenges, the environmental challenges. Questions, ladies and gentlemen. Can I just ask if there's any questions from within the room? Okay, I'll go to online then, first of all. Parachute.
Thanks, Tim. Dave, we have a question for you from Steve Gregson. Steve asks, does the constant renewal of cooling systems not represent a lot of new products and lots of redundant units being scrapped?
So yes, it does, if you think from a building by building approach. And that's some of the issues that you have with manufacturers taking on this responsibility or building owners taking on this responsibility. When you move to a portfolio-based approach, then essentially the provider is incentivized to maximize the life across a particular project and also move those assets around and extend their life across other projects. So as an example, we have data centers which during COVID times grew exponentially. And actually we had cooling systems that were too small. The chillers were too small. And in the old model, because their capacity increased, they had to throw out these chillers and buy bigger ones to put in more capacity. What we could do actually is take those chillers off our data centers and move them into some of our other facilities or other buildings within our portfolio, and then bring in new equipment. So you're now managing a portfolio of assets, which allows you to be far more circular in your approach, and you can move things around, as opposed to just putting things in and taking them out. You can see that there is a level of requirement at a data center or a pharmaceutical manufacturing facility. There's another level at an office block or a shopping center. So essentially you can move these bits of equipment around so that they're fit for purpose for duty machines, standby machines, different markets, etc. And we've done that across multiple buildings already.
Thank you, Dave. We have a question in the room, and I'm looking for my chap with the mic. No? Sorry, just...
Hi, Dave. Matthias from Grundfos here. Question. One of the things that I think it was Lucy also alluded to was the connection between inequality and being subject to the greatest effects of climate change. So one thing is to address the capital strong markets, whether it be in Singapore, Southeast Asia, etc. Do you guys have any plans going into more like bottom of the pyramid markets, or like more capital weak markets?
Yeah, so if I understand your question correctly, it's sort of markets where they may not have access to the technology or the capital in order to run these systems. The answer is yes. So we do a lot of work in India, and we're expanding more into that market and some of the areas there. So we're in Pune at the moment and expanding into some of the other cities there. And actually, the great thing about this is, money finds good ideas, regardless of what market that you're in. Because of the performance of these systems, they are extremely financially viable to offer cooling as a service to customers and to still allow people to bank projects and to finance projects. So there's no market. We've looked at Malaysia, we've looked at Indonesia, we've looked at Australia, we've looked at Thailand, Vietnam, and India. In all markets, on a project by project basis, the finances add up. Because there is just so much wastage. That improvement in performance that I showed with the Caterpillar effect is so powerful that you can do it in any market around the world.
Thank you, Dave. We have another question online, Parachute?
Yes, we have a question from Harry. Harry, would you like to introduce yourself and ask Dave your question, please?
Hi there, many thanks. Yeah, Harry Martin, Ministry of Defence UK. David, that was a fascinating presentation, and I think I think in many senses inspiring. I'm really interested in the relationship you have with your suppliers. I imagine to implement the kind of changes that you mentioned, you'd need control over IP and influence over sort of technical improvements and modifications and that kind of nature of business. Do you have a transactional relationship with your suppliers, or do you in turn have a servitized relationship with them to enable you to have that kind of influence? Thanks.
Yeah, that's a great question. So we've been in the air conditioning field for about 70 years, and we started as sort of a distribution business, and then we were a turnkey contractor, and then we became a cooling as a service business 10 years ago. The relationship we have currently with the manufacturers is that we use all of them. We have no relationships with them, and we buy it just as a building owner would buy it. So essentially, we used to sort of compete and be in that market alongside them. Now we become their customer. So we buy chillers from Daikin, and then we take on that CapEx and that investment, and then we offer cooling as a service, cooling towers, chillers, pumps, etc. So Grundfos, we use their pumps, and we put all that together, and then we offer it as a service.
Dave, thank you very much. We're out of time for the questions, but thank you very much. Very interesting presentation.
Yes, thank you.
We're going to move now from Singapore to Warwick, so that we can go from cooling as a service to heating as a service. And I'd like just to see if is Ollie online? Can you hear me, Ollie?
I can indeed. Can you hear me, Tim?
I can hear you. I can't quite see you yet, though.
Hopefully you'll be able to see me.
We can now. Ollie Moffat, welcome. I'll ask you to introduce yourself, and I'll leave you to manage the room as you normally do.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Tim. It's been great to listen in all day, but in particular, I really enjoyed Dave's presentation a moment ago. I was trying to think of a similar animal for heating as caterpillars, and I was starting to think about centipedes, but in the fact that in the heating world, it seems like we've got 100 legs all trying to go into different directions. So I'm going to hopefully today talk about one direction in which we want to be looking at in particular. And I'll go through in a kind of a few different phases. So first of all, I'll just introduce myself, my role, and the wider business that I represent here today. But importantly then, what I want to do is cover the work that we are doing as a larger manufacturer around heat as a service. So I think we heard some really nice facts already about Lucy with the importance of heating across the globe, and how, I guess, importantly, I'll be addressing us as a manufacturer, why we think, it's important for us and also important for the UK and important to our customers. I'll then talk a little bit about then, how are we devising this heat as a service, and how do we think it will meet those challenges then I'll be looking to introduce. And then finally, I guess I'll just be talking about a bit about kind of our roadmap and our steps and how we're pursuing it, and also some of the examples of the work that we're working with a wide range of partners, internal, external, to help us develop a heat as a service model, as it's certainly not something that's can be done in a day. It's been a combination of work over the last few years, and we've certainly got more to do as well. So to start off with then, just as an introduction, so my role within BDR for Mayor UK and Ireland is a segment manager, and I have the kind of the pleasure of looking after whole market segments and understanding what are those customer requirements. And that's really important, as where heat as a service, or I guess any servitization should come from, is examining what are those requirements for a customer, putting that customer at the heart, and what are those outcomes they want and expect out of it. We're part of a larger group then called BDR for Mayor, and some of you here may or may not have heard of it. And effectively, you can see some of those stats in front of you, but we're represented globally. Our head office is in the Netherlands, but importantly, we also have a UK division, BDR for Mayor UK and Ireland, and a number of key brands. So one of the ones for those here in the UK who may know is Baxi. And Baxi is a large manufacturer for around 150 years, very much focused originally on kind of domestic gas boilers. So 1 out of every 3 people in the UK will have one of our domestic gas boilers. But as I'll talk today in the presentation, we're doing a lot more. And it's actually really important why I bring that up, as heat as a service plays a critical part in how we as an organization will develop and continue to serve our customer needs, and also our wider part of the business. Today we're focusing on one customer segment, and I'll be talking about our work we do within the UK of social housing, and wider housing associations. But it's important to say that us as a business, we offer our different thermal solutions across a wide range. And again, you can see some on there, whether that's commercial or residential, all the way to kind of contractors. And actually, Heat as a Service, I would say, has an important part to play, an ability to play in most of those segments. But just in terms of ease of conversation and choosing kind of one example, which we're really developing and working on, will be around housing associations and local authorities. I mentioned one of the products we do in terms of domestic gas boilers, but actually it's important to say we do a wider range of products. And actually you'll see, we also talk about cooling as well. So for us, as we transition and support customers, primarily what we do is around heating customers and supporting them, but also it's around actually delivering what they want out of that outcome and that service. And also, again, you can see there about being comfortable. And it will come up in the next couple of slides when I talk about some of particularly the UK challenges to decarbonisation. And it's important for us as a business about how we transition with that. So in terms of that, you can see some examples of those products. And particularly, we talk about kind of the 3 H's. So heat pumps being one of them and looking at supporting through electrification. We also start talking about hydrogen and the role of that and supporting with decarbonisation. So we've got one of the first UK homes all equipped and all running on hydrogen, and many other wider products supporting that generation of kind of changing of all of those products. And the last H then it would be heat networks. So supporting some of those wider multi-occupancy solutions and those heating requirements. So generating power from effectively power plants and actually then into those independent properties. But as a business, we probably fall into this trap. We talk about products quite a lot because we've been manufacturing for 150 years and we would typically look at ourselves as a product manufacturer. But you'll see in the next slide, we start having this kind of culture change of talking about the wider services we do, whether that's kind of the digital products and solutions we do, whether that's actually our installers who go out and engineers who repair projects, install them, or much wider than that. And that brings me on to my next slide, really. And it's about our mission. And this is one in which we've changed over the last year or so and really put into its place across our whole entire business. And you can see it on the right-hand side of your screen there, which is around actually, getting away from just being product orientated and talking about providing smart thermal comfort solutions, but also about enabling that zero carbon. And that's really important for us, because we're starting to talk about the comfort of that customer rather than just a product that's going into the home. And it's really important because we're talking about, it being zero carbon, and we're talking about how we want it to enable that by being smart. So it's kind of unpicking some of that language is actually probably sounds quite obvious for some of you, but for us in our organization and how we've gone past it is very different from the way we've talked about it. And I've just picked out a couple of our strategic objectives and initiatives because I think those are quite hopefully an insight into our organisation as well. So that first one, yes, of course, as we approach these new challenges and new technologies, we're adapting for that. And I mentioned those kind of 3 H's of technology. So we're transitioning around as well to make sure we can support our customers in a better way. But also, I think really important is the second one, and this is certainly where Heat as a Service lines up. We believe that, for us to remain competitive, to support our customers and really deliver for the future, we need to look at actually how we're distributing our products and also that whole model as well. So, I wouldn't probably speak too highly to say, we believe Heat as a Service plays a really critical role in that and how we actually can, A, enable our mission, but B, support our business in ultimately delivering it. So that was a bit about, I guess, us, our objectives and where we want to go. And we heard some really nice slides and statistics from Lucy earlier, or actually probably weren't very nice, but very important in terms of the dramatic effect. And I've only just started with one simple one there. Yes, looking at the UK in terms of actually heat and its impact of decarbonisation, it's around 40% of UK emissions across it. So massively important then in terms of, looking at the challenge ahead. And again, we heard already about the importance of across globally, but also UK and some of those zero carbon targets. And so energy itself plays a vital role in how we look at it. So as you can see on the screen, how we generate it. So, from those different products in those different homes, distributed as well. So looking at that efficiency within a building to all those wider multi-occupancy establishments, and also behaviours and consumers and how it works. Really, the important one for me, actually, I won't labour on that, A, because it's been covered so well already, but B, most of the problems that we need to solve are from human behaviors, or helping us to influence those human behaviors to affect us in a better way. So, as again, it says on the screen, so if you're looking at changing it for the UK and how we can support those 30 million homes and persuade customers to switch it, it's not just about the product. Having conversations at the product level is not going to do it. We have to think about actually how we can engage with people around it. So, and especially you see there on the screen that a lot of the issues is around cost. Having if any of you look to swap into something like a heat pump in comparison to a domestic gas boiler, the price is probably going to make your eyes water. And some of the complications about, finding the right installer to help to support you. How do you know you're getting a fair deal on some of your energy? All of those questions and many more really means, helping to understand that and changing consumer behaviors is vitally important. And there is some resistance as well, as it says on there, in terms of, maybe worrying about, what's the risk of I've enjoyed how I've got it at the moment and how it might be very different to my comfort, to my energy. So understanding those resistances is certainly important. And I think, as it says on the screen, heat to serve as a kind of vital role of how we in the UK can support our decarbonisation targets. As I mentioned near the start, I'll be just focusing on sort of social housing here within the UK. And in particular, then I just wanted to share, I guess, why heat service is needed to solve some of these challenges from these two customers' perspectives. And I'll start with the housing associations. It's an unfortunate statistic there on the screen, and it's a bit outdated, but still applies that, back in 2019, it's not too, and it's going up in places, unfortunately, that for about 13% of households are in fuel poverty in England. So that's, being able to not afford their energy and billing around it. So how do we help solve that? I think heater service has a vital role to play in delivering that. Part of that comes down to choices and transparency around costs. So that could be in many ways understanding what energy they're using and how that impacts customers. But also there's a transparency around that, how much is being used within that home. And I've got another kind of, not fact, I wouldn't say, but in terms of building those apartments or houses, or looking even when we retrofit them, so make improvements, that end user, so whoever's living there, is often at a bit of an artifact in terms of how then that heating gets put together. Whether that's, the product itself, the thermostats to be able to use it, the installation of the property. Often it's designed around the builders who are maybe putting it together, or the installers who are installing it. And actually the person who's living there for 10, 15 years or even less or more is actually at an afterthought. He's a service thinking about the actual outcome to be delivered, puts it front and center. And also from a business perspective then, so from housing associations and how they support it, you can see again some of those statistics in front of you, but there's an enormous amount of cost then in terms of the spending that's on it, especially from that maintenance point of view. So engineers going in to repair those products, to replace parts, and much more. Actually, it's a huge cost on those organisations that can potentially be better spent on making those buildings more efficient and further improvements around it. And ultimately, we are in the age of technology now, and data plays a really key role in this. And often the basic products, when you're talking about boilers and similar, are not alluding to a lot of good insights in which to actually help those tenants better, or from a business perspective to manage it. So we're really not using what data we have at the moment very wisely, or in terms of actually gathering a lot. So both of those as well, it plays a really vital role in why heat as a service can support. And it's worth mentioning, just so it might be other manufacturers here on this call or other businesses, this also plays then not just a role for helping the UK, not just helping customers, but as an organisation ourselves. We think selfishly, why should we do it as a manufacturer? Why should we care? And one primarily is around competition. When I'm talking about a lot today about these kind of moving away from traditional gas boilers and all the rest of it, and talking about these new 3Hs of products, actually with that comes a wide variety of competition. There are new players in these markets. There are old and well-established ones, and others are we're all competing for the same space around supporting customers in their home. So for us to help differentiate ourselves, for us to deliver great solutions for our customer, heat as a service can play a vital role in that. And I'm sure you've heard of this lots over the last couple of days in many different ways, but also, this goes to the heart of what those customer expectations are, how they want, more than just a product. No one really cares about their boiler. And it might hurt me and some of my colleagues in our business, but actually it's to the truth of the matter. Customers care about that outcome. They want that comfort. They want that warmth. And therefore, it is important we start talking around that language and shaping our solutions to meet that as well. It's also vitally important when we're talking about heating and offering heat as a service, we start talking around providing heating for that system in the home. We can't look at products independently to support them. So we have to start talking about, the radiators that provide it. We have to talk about the actual heating product, like a boiler or a heat pump. We have to start thinking about things like insulation. We have to start thinking about how they're going to control it through a smart thermostat or wider. So straight away there, I've listed 4 or 5 different products that really fit into this system around it. So us as an organization, whether that's by ourselves or working with partners, need to think how we deliver that service to that customer. And finally, on kind of the why and why is it so important for us, is talking about, that importance of data. I've already mentioned that it's quite challenging at the moment in terms of the lack of it for housing associations, for example, to make those decisions. Well, actually, it's really important for us to deliver this heat as a service. We need that data and also to make those improvements. So there's certainly a race within that home environment, and particularly from major technology players, looking their own things. We might all have our own smart devices in our properties at the moment. So I spent a little bit of time, I think I'm on track talking about kind of the why of it all. So let me just spend maybe one quick slide on the how of it. So I won't go into a lot of detail today in terms of kind of how we're making up heat as a service and the key elements of it. But really, I just wanted to come to the nuts and bolts. And for us, that's about then providing those better outcomes to tenants and housing providers over their heating system. And we start talking about, for us, kind of the lifetime of that product, but actually more than that, in terms of then, this came up in Dave's and the cooling, that transition away from, if it's a domestic gas boiler now, and in 5 years' time, it's a heat pump or whatever that suitable product is, coming along with that lifetime. And for us, what we're trying to do then, we're looking to bring home some of our smart devices. So for example, that might be the smart thermostat I've already mentioned, but we also have IoT based products within our heating products to understand then the usage and the performance of those products, and in terms provide a better solution to that customer. And we've got a number of key metrics we're looking to provide, and those are around actually ultimately the reliability. So how can we make sure we avoid those breakdowns and challenges of those products? How can we have the best performance? And that performance is both in terms of gas usage, if they're using a gas boiler, and in terms of comfort of that customer. So what temperature they're setting at, how adequately warmth or comforted they are around it. And I won't go through the whole list in front of you there for both those benefits, but maybe I'll just pick a few important ones out for us. So we've seen some of our testing and build around it is already delivering benefits around service and maintenance costs. So the really simple one is, helping to know what's going on with some of those challenges via IoT devices is allowing us to have better service and repair around it. We're also seeing a number of other benefits then around, how we use that energy usage to flag potential issues. So I mentioned earlier about the challenges of fuel poverty, and we certainly can't solve that one alone, but we're able to give better information to social housing providers to flag when a customer is effectively potentially at risk of fuel poverty by not using their heating for prolonged periods, or other data-led kind of analysis of it. We also then look at how we can increase that lifetime of that particular heating system. So that could be as simple as understanding that performance of the heating product, like the boiler, and scoping out when that might need replaced, or it might be a bit more advanced in terms of that whole system thinking around it. So that was a little bit about the kind of the social housing. In terms of actually from some of the benefits for us, it is an obvious one to say, it's looking at us as a manufacturer, transitioning away from maybe some of our traditional business models of building our products, selling them on to third parties like merchants, who in turn go to the customer, and thinking about how we get that longer term relationship. So with some of these customers now, we are not only engaging on a daily basis, supporting them with advice and repair work, but also we're talking about that long-term vision of how we can best support where they want to go with their heating initiatives, how we can best support their own changes of decarbonisation. So there's been very much a different way of, supplying that product and effectively forgetting it until it breaks down or some other challenge comes, or there's another tender for more products, but to this more long-term relationship and how we develop. And again, ties into that our kind of core pathway at the bottom of that in terms of, how we then decarbonize ourselves and also with our customers. So it ties straight in and around it with them. So I just want to spend then the next couple of slides talking about, I guess, this roadmap and what are we pursuing with Heat as a Service. I could certainly spend about an hour talking about it, and I kind of promised Tim and others that I wouldn't. So I'll talk at it from a high level. And again, especially from other, doesn't have to be manufacturers. It could be, we've heard some from finance partners and others today about maybe how the approach we've taken to develop our own competency and our own learning around our servitization model. And we started it effectively, probably nearly a couple of years ago now. And one of the initiatives that we knew we needed to improve to enable us to do it was around was around our products. It is not all around it, but it was certainly an essential one for us in terms of then looking at how we get that diagnostic data and how we get the right information to ourselves and our customers. So we started that by doing a soft launch, we would describe it as, back in 2020 to some of our domestic customers around offering an IoT-based connected service for their product, their boiler. So that would be offering things like service, repair work that we could do either remotely because we understand what's going wrong, or we can better have kind of KPIs and deliveries of those customers to make sure, A, we can avoid that breakdown, or if it was to break down, we fix it as soon as possible. And we did that from the homeowner side. We learned a lot, a great deal. Learned some painful lessons, but some good ones as well. And in terms that helped us then think about what kind of diagnostic services we would want to support for the social housing. So we did a similar approach then in the not too distant past, about a year ago. And this was to social housing in particular this time, focusing on that first time fixed rate and focusing on how we can improve their operation efficiency. We also did have a number of other performance in terms of customer comfort, fuel poverty, and similar kind of metrics to help support. And really, this last couple of years has been our basis of growing our knowledge, growing our information around, what's the requirements for the approach and how does it best being delivered. And all that kind of learnings and many of those bits has helped us then scope out, how we deliver that heat as a service, how we actually support those social housing landlords to deliver that insight and support it. And I would say we've kind of taken a kind of a core-based service model and then looked to develop it further. And that's really our next step, to make sure we kind of deliver that, build it, and we're really confident that not only delivers what we want out of it as a business, but also, importantly, to those various customers and stakeholders. But we see this as as a progression. It certainly won't end there for us. So my last kind of point on there, number 4, Heat as a Service plus with a bit of a question mark. And it's a question mark because there's still lots of unknowns and there's still lots of development. But I wanted to share a bit of it. And that's effectively that how we start to then fully integrate our heating service, which also includes the likes of energy within that. And that might be done by ourselves, or it could be done via partners. And the reason why that's really important is, to truly deliver that heat as a service, we believe we need to have the right influence on that energy, whether that's just from a pure billing side and understanding cost and distribution, but more importantly, actually understanding how that can impact, those different customers and what we can do to keep being more sustainable along that and ultimately help deliver our model. So, we're really proud of some of the kind of the key steps we've taken, and we've certainly got a lot more to go to achieve our ultimate vision around it. For the last slide then, before I open to questions, I really wanted to share some of the work on, I guess, what helped us deliver this and what will help us deliver this going forward. And some of the people are here today, actually, within this current, which is brilliant. You might have heard about some of this already during the last couple of days. But one of the approaches, we've always been really keen on is some of the taking advantage of research projects and opportunities. So we did some really interesting work with the DES around digital twins of a servitization model, taking some of our products and looking at modeling it from a product perspective, but also from a digital twin of a customer. And it really helped us deliver lots of good, interesting insights, which we turned and helped develop to our project and our business model itself, but also helped validate some of the approaches that we could approach and around it. We certainly wouldn't be able to do this alone. You know, we're experts, I'd like to say, around manufacturing, particularly in heating products, but certainly not advanced services. So working with the likes of the Advanced Services Group and wider partners has helped us with our knowledge to understand how to do it and approach it. We've been fortunate enough as well then to take advantage of funding opportunities. So we've got an Innovate UK project at the moment around helping us create an advanced service demonstrator. And maybe if next year this will be one, and certainly we can actually show off and demonstrate. But effectively what we're doing is creating this demonstrator where we can take customers and other visitors to see our Heat as a Service in action. Everywhere from actually how the digital interfaces work, so seeing connected products, but also importantly how the business's model working from across that chain. So a really exciting one for us, and over the next few months getting up and live around it. And then the final one I kind of skipped over, but a really important one is, you know, you have to learn by doing. And maybe that's one of the things I'll end on. You know, it's great to talk about it, certainly in days like today, to learn from very smart people who are applying it in many different ways. But I think the key is to apply it. You know, we've done that through running either trials ourselves with some of our key customers or with external groups like the Energy City Catapult. And that's been, you know, really integral to speeding up not only our own development with it, but also our confidence that, you know, it's a model that can work for our customers, but also a model that can work with and for us as a business itself. And I'll end it on that note because I think I'm just about on time.
Ollie, thank you very much. If I may, Ollie, I'll just ask a quick question myself. I was intrigued when I saw your illustration of the competitors. Those competitors, they were people like Worcester Bosch and Valent and such like, traditional boiler manufacturers. I don't think I saw people like British Gas or even Amazon appear on that list. I mean, we know that this change to these business models changes the exposure to the competition, changes the picture of who the actual competition actually are. How do you feel about it? I mean, are there companies out there at the moment in time that you just partner with, but actually you think in this new world, when we get to this Heat as a Service, maybe they will be competitors to us? Any thoughts on that?
Sure. Yeah, really great question. So yeah, the image you showed probably showed that traditional 6 or 7, let's say, larger manufacturers of heating products. And that is the traditional, but yeah, certainly in the future, it's much more, and especially up and down that value chain. So if I was to draw maybe our potential competitors for Heat as a Service, it would go from 7 to 20 to 30 and in the different sides. So, you know, you mentioned technology. Yes, certainly some of the big, maybe even big 6 around it. So, you know, your likes of Google are certainly going into the home territory, and I could see them being very interested. From an energy provider, so you mentioned British Gas, certainly one that they're investigating. I think it's an interesting one where everyone's got at the moment maybe pieces to the different puzzle, and not everyone has the answers on delivery. So for us, for example, we certainly see a kind of a partnership approach, helping us with our gaps of either knowledge or actually capability. So part of that could be financial, part of that could be product wise, you know, Grundfos as well as some of our products in our boilers and wider and other areas. So I guess as a simple response would say, yes, that competition is growing from different providers and from different capabilities. Us as an organization, you know, we would like to play a key role and part, and we believe we can with our knowledge and our infrastructure, but we certainly believe we wouldn't do it alone.
Thank you, Ollie. Thank you. So, ladies and gentlemen, any questions from the room? Question?
Hi, Ollie. Paul Lucas at IFS. Just interested what you see as the advantages, the key advantages, maybe 1, 2, for Baxi in terms of doing this? You know, you're doing this for a reason, you're investing. Why? You know, what do you see for your business as those key advantages?
Cool. Yeah, one or two. So the first one that came to mind is of a pure competitive point of view as a business. So as if we keep talking about the example I've given today, social housing providers, as one of our chief customers, you know, they have a portfolio of products they can choose from other manufacturers. Key differences being, you know, very minimal, maybe about, you know, the performance of those products, and often, you know, it does come down to cost in terms of, you know, who might win a particular tender or what the warranty is and some such. So one of our, I guess, our first drivers for it is around that potential competitive advantage in terms of how then, you know, we can actually have that longer term relationship. We can deliver value to that customer through further cost savings, through further extra value services and into that customer. So I think answer number one is certainly around, you know, how we want to have our business model supporting ourselves and our customers going forward. Second one, I would say then it goes back to that kind of topic of sustainability and decarbonisation. When we start looking at those other products like heat pumps, like hydrogen, even heat networks to a certain extent, you know, they do come at a cost at the moment, which makes it very challenging to potentially sell to customers across that different chain or make it viable for them. And heat as a service and thinking about those different, you know, let's call them packages which surround it, you know, and taking away either those upfront costs for some of those customers, or thinking about smarter models which can deliver them, helps them and help us to transition to those products by making it, you know, much more viable to do. So I could keep going actually, so I'll stop. But the first one, as I said, would be around competitiveness, and second would be, you know, helping us make some of that decarbonisation and product changes.
Thank you, Ollie. What we'll do now, we'll go to one of the questions we have online. Parachute.
Thanks, Tim. We have a couple of questions online. We'll start with Umail. Umail, thank you for a question. Would you like to ask that directly to Ollie, please?
Hi, Ollie. This is Umail Palaniappan from Rolls-Royce. And my question is more around the financial side of things. So why does moving to as a service make better financial business sense for Baxi?
Yeah. So this is it's a fun topic which I've had with our RFD in different ways. So, you know, there are elements where, you know, you go away from that maybe traditional method of finance for our products, you know, selling them as is, getting the money up front, you know, certainly makes things a lot more comfortable and easier to handle. But I guess why it makes sense financially is I would split that down to a few different sides. So one, customer demand is part of it. So whether it's housing associations, developers, or lots of variety of our customers, they have a real drive and interest to understand different and have, or let's say receive, you know, financial models, particularly around heat as a service, whether that's to help cash flow or wider. So one of it, it's purely from a customer driven. So, you know, if the need helps with them, it helps ourselves as a business. And secondly, we can also then look at, from a heat as a service perspective, what are those extra enablers and extra services that we can tie and wrap around it. So, you know, we are stepping away from just offering that product with that one bit of, let's say, cash to support, and starting to think about the wider variety of services. So, you know, if I was to start saying about, you know, whether that's the ones that are IoT enabled and giving the advice around performance advisory, we've got others around actually then how we tie in remote management. So, you know, solving those problems remotely, avoiding engineer visits altogether. We start thinking about, you know, the topic of fuel poverty or just comfort enabled services. So I guess where it makes financial sense, apart from that customer lead and helping support them, is for us as a business to then start, you know, stepping away from just products into services and solutions and growing, you know, I guess, that revenue and that partnership with the customer.
Thank you, Ollie. And of course, there is an argument that says he actually hasn't got a choice. The only choice he has is when, not if. We will move to a final question, Parachute.
Yeah, Ollie, we have another question for you from Steve Gregson. Steve asks, how does your service interface with the energy providers give the open market for energy supply?
Ooh, I'd love to discuss with you with this afterwards. Actually, send me a message. I'll give a simple answer, which is it's complicated, which isn't a simple answer. But a more useful one would be it really depends on at the moment the kind of the product or the sector. So really, maybe it's just to be simple. One to talk about would be something like heat networks. So heat networks, often are provided by one energy service company. So they're actually providing the energy itself, not necessarily British Gas or another one. And in terms of some of those, it actually, is challenges, especially from a customer perspective, of some of that openness and choice. You're limited to that one provider who's supporting that actually energy usage. It might be someone like maybe Baxley supporting with the maintenance and the wider side, but the energy primarily will come from one. So actually, there's a long way to go, I guess, is what I'll answer it with, to how we can ensure that for any customer who then, whether it's a housing association, tenant, commercial business, signs on to a heated service model, can potentially, as the contract develops over 5 years or less, swaps pure kind of energy sources around it. Those are questions that probably haven't been answered. But I'd love to discuss it if you want to send me a message afterwards.
Ollie, thank you. And thank you again, really, for a really excellent presentation. Thanks. Ollie, we will leave you in Warwick. We'll now go over to Switzerland, and we'll go to our final presentation of the day, to Demetrius from the Bays Group, who's going to take us back again to talk, I believe, about, again, cooling as a service. Demetrius, are you there?
Hello, Tim. Yes, can you hear me?
I can hear you and I can see you. So over to you, sir.
Many thanks, Tim, and apologies. I'm calling from a booth, but we're back in the office and all the meeting rooms are booked out. So it's a pleasure to be back at the office, but some of the inconveniences to call from a small room. So first of all, hello everyone, and thank you for inviting me today to present our work on servitization as applied to cooling. And I take also the opportunity to thank also Lucy, Dave, and Oliver for their very interesting presentations on this session. So I'm Dimitris, and I work for Bays, the organization behind the Cooling as a Service initiative. So before anything, let me briefly share a few words on the organization I work for. Let's see if the slides work. Perfect. So Bays, which stands for the Basel Agency for Sustainable Energy, is a non-for-profit foundation based in Switzerland, founded about 20 years ago by the Swiss government, and we are also a special partner from the UN Environment Programme. So for the past 20 years, really our expertise has been on developing innovative financial mechanisms and business models to accelerate investments into sustainable solutions to tackle climate change. So we work really with a variety of players and act as a bridge between the public and the private sectors. And some of our partners include, for instance, multilateral development banks, national banks, financial institutions, development agencies, or even philanthropic organizations. So before jumping into the core of the topic, I'll take a step back and explain why we focused on the cooling industry as such, and similarly as well on other applications within the energy efficiency sector, such as heating. And these figures were also mentioned by Dave and Lucy earlier on. So I'll be very brief on those, but just to repeat that cooling today really represents 10% of worldwide energy consumption. And this is really estimated to triple over the next 30 years, as Dave mentioned. Now, this, of course, is a super interesting investment opportunity of approximately $6.9 trillion over the next 30 years, but it is also a huge climate risk. We see that businesses around the world engage with technologies which are on average 40 to 60% less energy efficient than the best systems available in their respective markets. And these figures are published also in the cooling report of the EIA, I think 2 years ago as well. So if we jump on the next slide, This we can see is even though the benefits of energy efficiency are really clear among all of us. For instance, looking at cooling systems as such, 90% of the costs are related to operation and maintenance. Hence, it means that the more energy efficient the system is and the more efficient their operation is, the impact on savings and on energy savings can be drastic. So looking at the market, we thought, okay, why is this happening? And most probably some of these factors were also mentioned earlier on in presentations this morning. We noticed 4 demand barriers that came over and over again. The first one was the high upfront cost of purchase of those energy efficient systems, or let's say high-tech devices. The second one, where customers usually have a lack of trust in the performance associated with these new technologies. And they are really related to that second point, because coming from the private sector myself, in my past, let's say earlier years in my career, I know how hard it is for the technical sales team to sell performance to their customers. The third point is businesses, of course, have their own investment priorities. And very often those are related to the returns they have to provide to their shareholders. So they look at a time span of 5 or 10 years. So therefore, they prefer to invest into their core business. And fourth, maintenance and spare parts of new technologies are typically seen as a business risk. So to tackle these challenges, we saw really a strong opportunity to bring the model of servitization in the cooling industry, and hence started the Cooling as a Service initiative, a project that has been in partnership with the Clean Cooling Collaborative, formerly known as KCEP, to mainstream the model in the markets. And today we're scaling up this to more energy efficient appliances. Here is a graph I typically like to show, because as Dave also very clearly mentioned, this model is not new. And it has been used for centuries, and more recently, it has been growing across equipment industries. As illustrated on this graph, one example I typically like to pick is solar as a service, which really enabled the growth of solar PV industry through the implementation of PPAs, or power purchase agreements, whereby customers, instead of buying their solar panels, they really pay per kilowatt of hour consumed, while the ownership, operation, and maintenance stays really under the responsibility of the solution provider. So actually, you already know what is cooling as a service. It is, oops, just give me a second. It is a shift from, of course, selling an equipment to selling a service. But what we see is really a business model that incentivizes the service provider to invest into energy efficiency while generating more revenues, as the ownership of the equipment is not with the final client, but with themselves during the duration of the contract. And here is an example we typically also like to share, is that even NASA is moving into space as a service, with SpaceX being their first new service provider. So if an equipment as complex as a rocket can be seen as a service, for sure also equipments as cooling, heating, or other energy efficient equipments can be provided as a service. So Dave already touched on that point, but I'll echo his words. Really, servitization is a business model that aligns the profit, the people, and the planet. And why is this? It's because, as we see, when the equipment stays under the ownership of the solution provider, suddenly, oops, sorry, my light went off. Suddenly, maximizing operating efficiency makes business sense for the provider, who can lower its operating costs. It also enables a system thinking approach, which enables lower life cycle costs for the provider. It maximizes reutilization of the equipment and reuse of the equipment through modular designs, therefore also minimizing stranded assets. And like also Dave mentioned, it optimizes a portfolio approach for really looking at an asset not as a singular asset, but really as the advantage of a portfolio of assets that you can really optimize, whereby consumption is really driven throughout the year. And it also encourages providers to keep innovating also for existing customers, which is something when you have one sale to a customer, typically doesn't happen. And if you want to innovate for an existing customer and you want to provide, let's say, innovation, even if it's a digital innovation to a client, you need to go through an entire procurement process with that existing customer, which also takes time. All in all, really the model incentivizes a design and selection of solutions based on long-term thinking, which also incentivizes a circular economy. One point that I like to underline is that it's important to know that the model is different than energy savings contracts, whereby contracts are signed with agreed upfront savings estimations, which sometimes may lead to frictions between the providers and end users. Sometimes end users might change, let's say, the infrastructure where the asset is situated, providing cooling, which thereafter changes also the consumption. So these contracts may lead sometimes to friction between the provider and the user. And another similar model is also district cooling, of course, which is in a nutshell super interesting, of course, but it requires massive investments and it's really large scale infrastructure projects. So cooling as a service enables to do that on a more smaller scale to focus to particular customers in local regions. So with CAS, what are the benefits of the key actors? And there I'll run a little bit quickly through it because we've already mentioned those. So the first one, very important, is the no capital expenditure upfront for the customer. Typically, it can be an off-balance service. It is really a full transfer of performance risk to the one providing the service, a full outsourcing of the cooling services, and customers can really focus onto their core business. So they can engage with state-of-the-art technologies hassle-free. For the technology providers, it can really increase the demand and deployment of the most energy efficient technologies. It really benefits from predictable and continuous revenue streams and brings additional value by selling outcome instead of selling equipment and spare parts. And as mentioned by Oliver, it really incentivizes a strong customer relationship focused on long-term performance. And finally, for banks and investors, they have the opportunity to place green funding. They invest in assets which generate cash flows. They can engage with green projects, which if we look at large-scale implementations can be between $500,000 to $3 million each. And those projects can be also bundled together to make the cost of capital more effective. And they have the opportunity to become really front runners to finance servitization models, which is a new trend. Very briefly, I'll touch upon some of the funding structures which we came across in industry, which support providers to recapitalize on their assets offered as a service. So here you have the first structure, which is a standard sale and leaseback mechanisms between the technology provider and the financial institution involved. So the provider signs a servitization contract with the customer and sales and lease back these assets with a financial partner. Guarantees can also be put in place to protect the technical provider against customer defaults or other risks. And here's a second model, which we typically see being applied, which is called a special purpose vehicle, whereby this SPV is set up to sign servitization contracts with the end client, while the technology provider delivers the service to the customers and the investors invest into the SPV structure. Again, a guarantee or insurance structure may be present to reduce project risks. And so what we see here, which is particularly interesting, is that even though to the end customer, the contract is innovative, and for the operation, of course, of the company providing the service, the financing at the back is provided with tools that are very common in the financing world. So it's all about educating banks or impact funds or whichever financial stakeholder is involved to provide the funds to know about these opportunities. And the structure within the organizations can be done with quite standard tools that they have. So as base, how have I been active as within cooling as a service? And I'll be very brief there. We acted on 4 pillars. First, we developed the Cooling as a Service Alliance, which today has more or less a little bit more than, I think, 65 members on board. And the purpose really of this alliance was to mix between supporting members and outreach members to create trust within the community, so that whenever we would reach a potential end customer to educate them on the opportunity of cooling as a service, they would see the amount of companies that are active in either implementing this model or looking to implement this model. Secondly, we developed also standardized tools, which are the cooling as a service, standardized contract, pricing models, the financial structures that can be applied, and the documentation to share to companies who are interested to implement the model. And this was really, again, to help them leapfrog towards how to implement the model and to avoid typical, let's say, mistakes that can be done when trying to implement this model initially. And of course, we did this, which for us was extremely important, together with demo projects across different geographies and industries. And the purpose there really was for us to stress test the model and to see, does it really work and bring value to the different stakeholders in each region and enrich each industry as well. And finally, of course, very important, we did a lot of work to raise awareness on this model. So this included podcast, case studies, which you will have a few exposed in the next slides, but also videos and a CAS e-summit, which you can still have actually access to. Additionally important for us was to raise awareness with trusted sources. So you can actually go through these different publications and read about cooling as a service and real applications that have been active across geographies. So now, since I have a little bit more time, I'll take the opportunity to share with you a few case studies that we had the privilege to write about or be involved with. The first one is actually a case study from CARE, the company of Dave. And this project was implemented already quite a few years ago. And it's really, for us, it was an example of state-of-the-art application for cooling as a service. So this project was implemented in India. And it's for a really large-scale real estate complex, which has a retail center, a school, offices, and community spaces. And the system implemented was actually an energy-efficient HVAC system of 700 tons of refrigeration, which the company managed to power entirely with solar panels, as mentioned, I think, by Dave earlier on. And initially, actually, the customer thought that this was not possible. So they were really surprised that such a large system could be powered fully decentralized by solar panels. So again, what the customer benefited from day one was an increase in energy efficiency. I think it was more than 25%. This completely hassle-free and fully powered by renewable energy, which, as we know, in some sectors, in some geographies, you can even apply for carbon credits. But so for us, really, the important part for the servitization contract as such is to be profitable beyond any of these additional gains that you may have with carbon credits and so on. So these are, we see them as cherry on the cake, so to say. Here you have a second example with a quite different application in Colombia. So again, completely different geography with a large office building with 100 offices. And there is the company MGM Innova Group that implemented cooling as a service on each of these 100 different offices. And overall, I think the energy savings attained were of 1.2 gigawatt hour per year, with greenhouse gas emissions reductions of 440 tons of CO2 equivalent per year. And here is an example of a company that presented this morning, Energy Partners Refrigeration, where the model was applied for an industrial client, Dr. Oetker, which benefited from an increase in energy efficiency of more than 20% as well, and is currently saving 1,200 tons of CO2 annually. And the last example, which is for us also quite interesting to show because it shows a complete different spectrum of application, it's for a company based in Nigeria called Cold Hubs that applied cooling as a service for the storage of agriculture products in remote areas. So here, this system is again fully powered by solar energy, which especially as well for markets like Nigeria is extremely important because the grid is very unstable. And it enabled to decrease local food spoilage by more than 50%, while increasing farmers' wages by 50%. And again, saving, I think, more than 460 tons of CO2 annually. So if you go on the CAS website, you can actually see these case studies and as well a video, which was produced together with BBC Storyworks that shows the application of care in India and as well Cold Hubs in Nigeria. So what is happening today at base with servitization? And this is the last slide, and then I'll give the floor to questions. We have been scaling up the implementation of the model also beyond cooling with applications such as heating, for instance, because we've noticed that for a lot of the customers we were interacting with, they were always raising the question, excellent for cooling as a service, can we also implement heating as a service, and can we do lighting as a service, and do you know of any digital tools that can enable us to go quicker in that direction? So we decided to actually connect all of these different stakeholders together so that we can help the markets grow more quickly towards applying energy efficient applications on the market. And we actually have a project in Europe called Efficiency as a Service, which currently focuses on 3 countries, Spain, Holland, and Belgium, to help also their customers adopt this model in applications on cooling and beyond to gain access to more energy efficiency. And last but not least, together with that, we are looking to scale up the Cooling as a Service Alliance to the Global Alliance for Servitization on energy efficient appliances to again help the different stakeholders connect and educate themselves on this opportunity and implement it within their businesses. So this closes my presentation, and I give the floor back to you, Tim. Thank you.
Thank you, Dimitris. Could I ask any questions in the room, ladies and gentlemen? Okay, so I'm going to go to Paraksheet and.
Sorry, Tim. No questions
No,
from
no
the
questions.
Zoom team.
I like Paraksheet. Sorry, Dimitris, you've done a wonderful job, and I think we're now well and truly indoctrinated on at cooling as a service. So I'd like to say thank you very much for your presentation this afternoon. Thank you.
Thank you.
And our own contribution to decarbonisation is that today we've been to Singapore, Australia, Ireland, the Netherlands, South Africa, and Switzerland without leaving Birmingham. So I think that's good. That's not bad. That's not without once jumping on an aeroplane. So that's pretty good going. So it draws to a conclusion, really, today's session. We've tried to choose a series of 3 topics which focus on grand challenges facing humanity, I guess, really. Starting this morning with ageing and healthy ageing, moving to food and food security, and finally to decarbonisation, and in particular looking at heating and cooling as services. Tomorrow we're going to move more towards looking at smaller businesses and the adoption of servitization in smaller businesses. So hopefully you'll all join us for that, and I'd like to thank you again for your participation today, both in person and online. Thank you. And that's it, folks.